Hello, welcome back to Tutoring Success, my level 7 pioneers. In this video, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about analytical geometry. By the end of this video, you should be able to answer each and every question that the examiner will try to trick you with on your exams. So without further ado, guys, let me start with our first subtopic. So in analytical geometry, guys, we are using formulas, right? So it is essential to know each and every formula and what does this stands for and how to use it actually. So we are having our first formula, which is known as the distance formula, right? So in a distance formula, you must be given two coordinates in order to use this formula, right? So sometimes they might give you the distance and then they ask you to find the other coordinate, right? So basically you are going to use this formula if you hear anything in your question that involves distance, right? So our second formula is known as the midpoint formula. What is a midpoint? A midpoint, guys, is a point that is at the middle actually, right? So in this case, we are given the distance from A to B, or the coordinates of A and B, right? We are looking for the coordinate of C, and we are told that C is a midpoint. So what does that mean? It simply means that when you want to solve for, or when you want those coordinates of C, you are going to use this formula. So you are going to add the x coordinate of A with the x coordinate of B and divide them by 2. That's how you are going to get the x coordinate of C, right? And then when it comes to your y coordinates, you are going to do the same thing, right? So in the next videos, I'm going to teach you how to find a midpoint coordinate, and this formula is what we use, guys. You are simply going to add these two coordinate and divide them by 2, right? Hopefully I'm understandable. If not, guys, please post that question on our comment section below. I'll make sure that I get back to you. And please don't forget to practice mathematics every day. So our next formula, which is I can say is the most important one, right? So it's known as the gradient formula. So how do we calculate the gradient? Actually, let me start by explaining what is a gradient. A gradient, guys, it simply tells us how steep our straight line graph is, right? So if our graph, or our straight line graph looks like this simply means that our gradient is greater than 0, right? And then when our graph is pointing like this, meaning maybe it's pointing to our left hand side, so we know that our gradient is going to be less than 0. So our gradient, it simply determines how your straight line graph is going to be, and it also tells you how steep it's going to be, because we can have a graph that is almost flat line like this, and then we can also have a graph that is upwards like this. So a gradient simply tells us how our straight line graph is going to look like and stuff, right? So how do you calculate the gradient, right? So a gradient, you only can calculate it if you are given two coordinates, right? So basically our gradient is change in y over change in x, right? Meaning that you must be having two coordinates. So you are going to take let's say y2 minus by y1, and the trick, or I can say the rule that you need to follow when you get when you want to calculate a gradient, you must make sure that if you said y2 here, you must start with x2 at the bottom, right, on our denominator, I mean. So you can also write our gradient as y1 is equal minus by y2, right? But if you started with y1, you must make sure that you start with x1 on our denominator, right? So okay, if you have any question again, please ask, guys. And if this video is valuable so far, please don't forget to put that like button. So our next I can say phenomenal, because right, it is formulas, but I like to use that name for these things. So let's say you are given two lines and you are told that these two lines are parallel to each other, right? What does that mean? It simply means that the gradient of this line or this graph, which is a, right, is going to be equals to the gradient of that other line that they are saying it is parallel to, right? So if you are being told, only if you are told, guys, so you must conclude that their gradient are equal or the same, right? And then we are having another scenario here. If you are being told that these two lines are perpendicular to each other, it simply means that the gradient of A multiply the gradient of B is equals to -1. So you don't need to ask me or ask God, guys. This is just math, guys. So if you are being given or you are told that these two lines are perpendicular to each other, that means you are going to use this formula to calculate. Maybe you are given only one coordinate on your A, and you are given the gradient of B. That means you can calculate the other gradient actually, which is our A gradient, by using this formula, right? So hopefully I'm understandable. So on our next formula is known as the straight line formula, right? So our straight line formula is simply our M stands for our gradient, right? And our C is simply our constant, right? And then X and Y is just our unknown variables, which is our Y and X coordinate, right? And then we go to our altitude. What is an altitude? So an altitude, guys, they will tell you that we are having an altitude from vertex C, right? And then they are telling you that this altitude is from vertex C. So you should know that if this is our altitude, that means our altitude is perpendicular to our straight line, which is AP, right? So you should be alert. Let's say here we are having D as our coordinate. So you can just say our gradient of DC multiplied by our gradient of AP is equals to -1, right? So this is how you are going to solve such questions, right? And then we have our last phenomenal, guys, our last phenomenal. So please don't forget to put that like button if this video was valuable to you, guys, and leave that comment on my on our comment section below, right? Okay, so our last phenomenal or last formula is known as the angle of inclination. How do you get the angle of inclination? Our formula is this one. So you are going to say tan theta is equals to our gradient, right, guys? So in maths, guys, you don't work on how do you feel like today. So you work on what does mathematics or the rules of mathematics say. So you are given a formula here, guys. You should be using it, and on our next videos I'll make sure that I explain to you how to calculate this angle, right? Let's say you are given a line like this. Where can we find our angle of inclination? Our angle of inclination, guys, is always measured anti-clockwise from our x-axis, right? So this is going to be our angle of inclination. Hopefully I'm understandable, guys. So what I've just said is that in mathematics we don't work on feelings, on how you are feeling like today. So this is our formulas that we are going to be using on on analytical geometry, right? So if you are given a line like this, we can see that our gradient here is going to be positive, right? So that means our angle of inclination is always measured from our x-axis to or anti-clockwise to our straight line graph, right? So if this video was valuable to you guys, please don't forget to put that like button and consider subscribing. So on our next video, we are going to be using each and every formula step by step and tackling exam questions. So on to our next video, my level 7 pioneers.